most reliable. Okay, so hi everyone and welcome to the Node.js release working group meeting for the 9th of April 2020. We'll follow the agenda in the Node.js release issue 564. And first item on the agenda is the release cadence due to the COVID-19 pandemic. I think there's been some activity on this one. I don't know if anyone can provide a summary of what we've done. Okay. So when we've been through all of our schedules recently and adjusted the timings, bearing the current situation in mind. I think the agreement was that we would not delay 14x, and we will be more mindful of our cadence of the other LTS release lines. We have put out a blog on nodejs.org detailing our approach to this, so changes to the release schedule. So all of our information is there. Thanks to Shelley for writing this blog up. And that covers what our schedule is going to be in light of the current situation. So other than just an update on what we've done in regards to this issue, I don't know if there's anything else left on it that needs to be addressed. I think it can probably be removed from the agenda and potentially even closed.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, I'll remove it from there. I'll put a link to the blog in after the meeting and also reference the blog in our minutes and then close this one out. Maybe with an additional comment saying we will continue to review based on availability and as the situation progresses.
Sounds good.
Okay, so that was the only item on our agenda, but I will go through the release plan. So Node 13, we only have 2 more releases due, and Michael, you're kind of got your name down for those. Is that plan still appropriate, do you think?
At least for the release next week, yes. I will prepare it. I'm going to try the work in progress PR that Shelley did for the last steps of the release procedure.
Mm-hmm.
So I think now almost everything should be automated in Node Core utils with that PR,
Awesome.
which is really nice. Yeah, if there's no objections, I will also do one last release on the 28th. It will probably be only with bug fixes, since it's the last one on the 13 release line. I think it will be end of life at the end of the month, right?
I think our schedule JSON in the release repo mentions like the 1st of June off the top of my head, but we don't schedule any releases after April. It's just if some massive bug came in and someone asked for a release, we would consider doing it just out of minimizing disruption to users.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, it's maintenance without calling it maintenance because we didn't want to have that commitment.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so to me, it makes sense that we have one last official scheduled release just after the release of 14.0, and then we will do one more only if needed.
Yep, sounds good. And I think those dates work really well because the 14 release is in the middle, which means that writing the changelog for 14 can be finalized like next week, which is a week in advance, which is great. Okay, so that's 13. For 12, I know we rejigged this last meeting. Where are we? We have one earmarked for this month, patch release of Node 12. We haven't got anyone's name down for it.
Yes, it will be on the same day of the 13. I prefer not to do this one.
Yeah, I think I may be able to help out, but I might not get the release candidate out in time. That's the only thing. But yeah. To be honest, we've already had a release in April, so I guess based on how much gets landed on staging and releaser availability, if no one can make this release happen, that's completely okay. It's not like it's been months between the different releases.
I don't know if I can commit to the release itself, but I can try to help a bit with the backboarding. So maybe we can just all kind of like keep in touch and make sure we're not duplicating effort, but I can maybe help with that side of it a bit.
Okay. Sure, I guess then we can maybe make a call on this issue. If there's enough to land and just put a release out, then we may as well just land what's on the staging branch at that point. That shouldn't be too much overhead. No, may be able to sign up to do that release.
Yeah, about 12.x, be careful everyone, because there are a lot of backports that are open on Node.js node, and most of them are about semver minor changes, so they shouldn't land before that 16.3 release.
Yeah. Sure. Bear in mind. Okay, seems we're good for that. Release 9 and 10. We've got TBD if needed for the 10 release, approximate date of the 5th of May. I guess as we see any bugs raised on it, we may address these. And again, make the call a bit closer to the time. I guess that release candidate could be a little later maybe, but.
Are there open issues that about known bugs on B10?
I did go through them for the 10.20 release that went out yesterday. Yesterday? Yeah, yesterday. And landed any patches I saw actually possible to fix. Everything else that was left open didn't seem like we'd be able to easily patch. It was, some things were just always going to stay that way, and some things relied on massive backports. So I think I landed what I could. There's nothing outstanding at the moment.
Did we go out with OpenSSL 1.1e or 1.1f?
Oh, that's true. We went out with 1.1e, so we probably do need to put out a 10 and 12 for 1.1f.
I mean, I think Sam said it probably wasn't a high priority thing because whatever they fixed, he didn't think affected Node, but I guess we might consider it.
Yeah. Sure. Okay. Hi, Ruben. I just saw him promoted. Sorry if I missed you for a minute.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. We've just been going for the release plan. The only, I don't know if how your availability is for releases, but the only one that we've not got a hard name next to is the 12.16.3 due in April. But we're going to try and get out if we can all dip in and land some bits on staging, unless you wanted to sign up for it.
Yeah, I can check my schedule when I'm available and just add myself to some of the releases. Right now, I'm not yet, at least not planning to be on the LTS team, even though this could be changed, I guess. So normally I only do the current ones up to now.
Okay, so what we could do is that I remove myself from the current release at that date, and I prepare the 12.x. If you're available to release on the 28th.
On the 28th? should be possible.
Awesome. I guess we can check schedules and just jot our names down. I think that was everything that was on the agenda, but that kind of relates to, we've got a couple of open items around dropping the backporters team and the release automation team that I'm not sure everyone on this call has been on a call to discuss previously. So I'll start with the proposal to rename the Citium team to release automation. So there's been quite a few thumbs up in the issues here. I may go ahead and rename unless anyone shares objections here. But the reasoning behind this was that the automation team isn't as active as it used to be when it was first set up. And potentially the release team should have some level of responsibility over the release tools, so like changelog maker, branch diff, and even no core utils. I think we were quite explicit and said this doesn't mean we have whole responsibility for these things. It's just we should have permission to make changes and review things on these repositories. Are there any objections from anyone who's not seen this? I'll take the silence as no objections and set an action to go through and rename after this meeting. Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
Sounds good to me.
Cool. Okay. The other one was the drop backporters team. So I think we've talked about the different structure, and the first bit that we saw that we can make a decision on was the renaming of Citium to be release automation. We have the releases and the LTS distinction. I think at some point I suggested, do we still need to make that distinction? Is that something we still want to do? Okay, I guess my concern here is that we don't have clear criteria for becoming a member of the LTS team. What would that criteria?
And it's not clear to me if the LTS team is just about giving permissions to release LTS versions of Node, or if it's more than this.
When we talked about these, like at least when I was suggesting it, I was imagining these kind of like independent bits. So the LTS bit is what would allow you to do anything related to LTS work. So if you were not a releaser, having the LTS bit would give you access to landing things on staging, but not doing releases. That's a role that, for example, Anna has filled. Whereas if you were a releaser and had the release bit but didn't have the LTS bit, then you could do current releases. And if you had both bits, you'd be able to do LTS releases.
And what is backporters in this schema?
So I'm trying to look back at what I suggest. I guess so LTS is the equivalent of backporters.
I guess my question would still be like, how do you become a member of the LTS team?
I guess it would either be through nomination or self-nomination.
Okay.
That may not be sufficient. I'm just like, I think that's just the status quo.
Mm-hmm. I guess, do we see having, so I think we want to encourage people to participate into LTS discussions, and we want to make that discussion more open for everyone. Users, people who rely on Node may have opinions on which features go back, etc. But then it seems like we're also using the LTS team to say, you have permission to release an LTS release. And I'm not sure how you can kind of use it to satisfy both. If we see releasing a LTS release as something that requires elevated permissions of sorts.
Yeah, I guess the way I was thinking about it was more that like you have the staging branches and we have the .x branches, and releasers have access to the .x branches but require the LTS bit in order to get access to the LTS.x branches. But perhaps we do need an extra level of granularity, but I don't think that's a level of granularity that we really have right now, because we kind of have the releasers team and the backborders team and the LTS team. And there are members of the LTS, like pretty much everyone who's on the LTS team at this point now has backporting access. And the only difference between releasers and those that can do the LTS releases is that kind of membership in the LTS team.
Okay.
Yeah, technically, right now, any collaborator of the Node.js Node repo has access to the staging branches.
Yeah, it's not enforced via policy, but rather via trust at this point.
Yeah, sure.
Although we could enforce it via policy.
Okay. Are there any like concrete actions we can take from this today, or is it something we need to mull over a bit longer? I guess no one's particularly +1 or -1 on the new structure, so maybe we just leave it until.
I think that's just one issue. If we want to use this proposed structure for access control, GitHub doesn't allow us, I think, to restrict a branch to someone who is in both. Who has to be in both releasers and LTS teams. You can give permission to either one or of them or both, but you cannot require both of them to be present.
So we might have the kind of technical overhead of just having a releases -LTS team with GitHub just to implement this.
Yes, either releasers -LTS or a sub-team of releasers, which would be, it should also have a name like that. Yeah. Yeah. Because if we keep the name LTS for people who are not necessarily doing releases, yeah, we need another team.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think hierarchy-wise, if there wasn't a new LTS releases team, if that was a sub-team of releases, that would probably simplify the access to things like Jenkins, because at the moment that's also controlled by the GitHub team. I think it does inherit sub-teams into permissions to the parent team.
Yeah, at the moment, who has CI release access? Which teams? Is it only the releases team, or?
It's only the releases team, I believe. Well, and the release admins in build.
Right. Okay. Sure. Not really sure what to suggest for the next steps on this task. Maybe in the minutes, I'll just write some more suggestions down, reference them in this issue, and see if that kind of odds some more agreement or disagreement. Okay.
I'm sorry, but I've got to drop. Thanks, everyone. It was great to chat.
Bye, Mouse.
Bye.
Bye.
Is there anything else in particular on our backlog that people feel we should kind of discuss or go over? One thing I might mention as an aside is all of the releases that have gone out on 10, 12, and 13 are now notarized, which means you shouldn't see the warning on Catalina anymore when you try to open it. I think it's worth keeping an eye on the issue tracker for any reported issues as a side effect of the changes we've made. I think, Richard, you saw that there might be one already, but
yeah, there might be one related to add-ons. It seems most likely based on their add-on worked in all the releases prior to the ones that just came out this week and the end of last week. So that would kind of implicate the changes we made. And it's probably the hardening of the binary rather than notarization.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's as much as I know. Were there any actions from that 12.16.0 post-mortem task that are outstanding? Or is this something that we've had the post-mortem and there are no actions to do and we could potentially close this?
I think so. I think that was all we needed to do. Maybe we could link to the minutes. I'm just opening the minutes to see whether there was a discussion that we can point to before closing it. Yeah, I can link to this and say discussed in this release meeting. Maybe even go as far as linking to the YouTube video if we can find out the correct URL for it. And link to it. Okay, I'll try and close that off after the meeting. The release mentoring and streaming is still happening where it can. It's still in the Node.js org calendar on Tuesdays, every other Tuesday. I guess something else worth mentioning is Node 14. It's due to go out on the 21st of April. The foundation's been in touch asking for some marketing and some like blog content to go out with it. I think Build is still updating for a few of the tool chains. So be aware of changes to the release CI that could be happening at the moment.
Yeah, there was a comment that came in a couple of hours ago suggesting that we might drop binaries for SmartOS in Node 14. But, I mean, that's literally only been suggested today, so that's been discussed.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to the blog post, so the best changelog we've ever had was one done by Mika, and I really like that. I personally believe we should try to go into that direction pretty much for any release, especially for the Zenva major ones.
Yeah, one thing I kind of toyed with is suggesting that when people add the notable change label to a PR in Node, if they followed a generic structure of a little comment that said notable change with some identifier or a tag or something, we would be able to automate that and pick it up. So when people add the label, they could be like, hey, I think this is an important change. I'm going to write some text because I contributed a change. I'm the one who knows how best to convey it to our users. Then we could automatically pick up a little paragraph of text for each thing that was labeled.
I like the idea, but so far the label was very rarely used overall. So we would have to pretty much bring that back to all collaborators that they try to remind people or apply the label on their own.
Yeah, and actually even the Zenva minor label is often missed in Zenva minor PRs.
Good point.
Yeah.
So yeah, ideally, yeah, that would be perfect. If the person who wrote the change could write a paragraph explaining what it is, but I think in reality, at the moment, it will not happen.
Yeah.
And yeah, so what I did took quite a lot of time. I tried to ask for help, but nobody came to help me. So I don't know what we can do to
Yeah.
share this this task.
I did find when starting the draft on the V8 8.1 upgrade, I did find that someone did do a nice breakdown on there. Can't remember who in particular of the new features.
It was Gus.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Richard, you linked that to me this morning, didn't you?
Yes.
So maybe we should have a Google Doc and we fill it.
Is this for the Node 14 release in general? Or
yeah, at least for the Node 14 release, and if it works, we can try to extend it to minor releases.
okay.
Yeah, good point. We could do that. It's probably more accessible than Markdown in this case, at least from the writing perspective.
Okay. Conveniently, the draft is already in Google Docs. I will check with Rachel at the OpenJS Foundation that I'm good to share it with everyone, and then add it to the minutes, and then everyone can dive in and add comments. That would probably be a really good way of getting the best of everyone's wording. That's for the Node 14 announcement blog. But maybe we could try and go ahead further if it works.
Yeah, cool.
I guess for some of the minors, some of the minor releases, it makes more sense than for patch releases in general.
I agree, yes. Usually for patch releases, you don't have many notable changes.
Yeah, and if they're small fixes, conveying them just as the commit message is probably okay for most part.
There's one more thing I would like to change about our changelogs in general, because often it's difficult to distinguish important changes, even if it's just a minor fix, from only internal things. So what I would love is to have a clear distinction between all test things. For example, test is never important for the reader. We should maybe even just have a generic comment about, and we had a lot of test commits or something like that. And that pretty much also applies to documentation changes, mostly, not always. And to some other commits as well, but in this case, we would have to look into it individually. But those two categories are often a big bunch of all the changes listed, while not really providing a big benefit for the user.
Yeah, I think I agree.
Mhm.
I can imagine people have to read through about 100 doc changes to find an actual functional change in our releases, because when I've been doing releases, I've certainly noticed a large proportion of doc and test.
So
Yeah.
we could change log maker for that.
Yeah.
To create two sections maybe instead of one.
We definitely need to call out any doc deprecations though. Although I guess if we could mark those with notable change or something, which they probably are, that might get around that.
True.
Yeah, we could even parse in the commit message something with deprecation.
Yeah, automatically promote that up to the notable section. That would be nice.
Yeah.
Huh, that's a good idea. I think we should raise an issue on our board to cover this, on our issue tracker, sorry. Yeah, sounds interesting and fun.
Because I think a lot of the tooling just looks at commit messages, doesn't it? It doesn't actually look at the contents of the commit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it also applies often to lib changes. Lib or source changes are sometimes ones that are not really important for the end user. But in this case, we have to look into them individually. How should we manage those? Because we could not really automate it well.
Yeah. I guess it wouldn't be too bad just leaving them in the regular section until we can come up with a good solution of filtering them.
Okay.
I think having test and non-notable doc changes as a starting point as a separate section would be quite nice.
Yeah, and then when you edit the file, you can still move around lines if you find that something is at the wrong place.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
So something that I also did recently is if there's one PR that has that is Semver minor, for example, but it has 5 commits and only one of them is the Semver minor part, I remove the Semver minor words from the changelog. I don't know if any of you did that, but I think that's it's better to not mark Semver minor, for example, the commit that adds a test.
I did that before as well.
Yeah. I think that something similar came up yesterday on the 14 release where
It was a deprecation. There was 2 commits. One was a doc deprecation, and the other one was an actual deprecation in the code. So only the doc one landed in 14, but because the PR was Semver major.
The PR was major, yeah.
Well, at the changelog maker obviously just looked at the commit and said, "Oh, the PR was Semver major," so mark the commit as Semver major. When only one of the 2 commits had been ported onto 14.
What about changing our tooling in this case as well? It might not be completely straightforward, but when we landed a PR and something is Semver major, and we see that not all commits are actually Semver major or minor, then we could just apply a comment that says, and these commits are actually Semver major or Semver minor. That way the tooling could pick that comment up.
Right, yeah.
I don't know if it's if it's possible. I mean, you would have to read all the comments of the PR to find it on all PRs that are in the release.
Some of the PRs have quite a few comments.
That seems a lot of pulled data from the GitHub API.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it would be a comment after merging or after the last commit, but it's probably we still have to read all comments, right? We cannot just tell the GitHub API to only show the last commits, the last comments after the PR was merged or closed.
What if we commented on the commit directly rather than the PR?
I'm sorry, can you please repeat that? It was a bit loud here.
Sorry. What if we can instead of commenting on the PR, what if we commented on the commits directly in GitHub?
Yeah, I like that. I like that as a meta information, as we do with other parts like fixed or referenced. That's a good point, and we could definitely do that to just mark a commit in a PR as non-Semver minor or non-Semver major. Or maybe even better, we just explicitly provide the Semverness in the commit message.
Yeah, that would help automation a lot.
I think this goes back to, I can't remember who it was it Matthias who raised something somewhere about the format of our commit messages and whether we should revisit the current format, which is the subsystem, you know, all those rules about line length and everything, as opposed to other projects that mark commits with like feature or you know, that kind of message format, which would make it easier to parse. But I mean, that would be a big change to change the commit format.
Yeah, I think that would be easier to convince people to add a new line in the commit message than to change the format completely.
Yeah.
Yep.
So these two things would definitely already improve our changelog a tiny bit and make it easier for us.
Yep. I wonder if for the Node 14 release, I should try separating it out into doc and test and see what it looks like. It shouldn't take too long.
Mm-hmm.
And then posting 2 options and see what people think. Manually at first, but I'm sure I can use grep to help me. Okay. I think I need to raise a couple of things on our issue tracker for this, but
yeah,
it will sound like good improvements that sound quite low in terms of technical requirements to actually implement. So sounds good.
and so about 14.0, do you have a date which will be the last one where you update the branch?
Hopefully next Tuesday. So I'm kind of waiting for your 13 release to go out, because you can't determine what was new in 14 until you've had the latest 13, because it's a branch diff delta. So I'll probably do the update next Tuesday or Wednesday, and that will be the final list of what goes in and comes out with 14.
Okay, yeah, I'll try then to maybe to prepare the release for Monday.
Okay, yeah, and then I can base off your proposal. Cool. Sounds good. Is there anything else anyone wants to raise? Scrolling through our list. I think Miles has done a couple of audits, just as an FYI, of participants in the working group to try and trim out anyone that's not active for access reasons, etc. Okay. If that's all.
What is this removing Python 2.7?
I think someone raised something potentially in the wrong repo. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's in the right repo. You're right.
Okay, other than that, I don't think there's anything else particularly that needs to be called out. So after this, I'll try and raise a couple of issues for the changes, for the change log that we're planning to trial out. I'll try and post a link to the blog so everyone else can dip in and review. And I think there was another thing, but I will remember when I submit the minutes. Cool. If that's all, I'll speak to you all later, and stay safe, everyone.
Thank you.
See?
Bye all.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.